Your sister just tripled your rent to teach you a lesson about failure. My name is Trina Reeves, and 3 years ago, those words would have destroyed me. This Thanksgiving, my sister Sarah, CEO of a $50 million real estate empire, announced to 15 relatives that she was raising my rent from $2,267 to $6,800 per month. She said I needed to learn my place as a failed property manager who couldn't even handle 3 rental units. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. What Sarah didn't know was that I'd been her landlord for 3 years, quietly owning the building that housed her precious corporate headquarters through a shell company I'd created in 2021. The Reeves family had a clear hierarchy, and I'd always been at the bottom. Sarah, 5 years older, had built Pinnacle Properties from a small brokerage into Boston's premier commercial real estate firm. By 39, she commanded a valuation of $50 million, managed 42 employees, and never missed an opportunity to remind everyone of her success. Mom always said Sarah was the successful one, CEO at 39, while I was just playing landlord with my 3 rental properties, became the family joke at every gathering. The comparisons started early. When I graduated from Boston University with a degree in property management in 2012, Sarah had already closed her first $1 million deal. When I bought my first rental property in 2019, she was featured in Forbes' 40 Under 40. And when I turned down her offer to join Pinnacle Properties as a junior associate in 2020, a position that reported to someone 5 years younger than me, she took it as a personal insult. "You're too proud to learn from success," she told me that Christmas, loud enough for our aunts and uncles to hear. "That's why you'll always be small time." What the family didn't know was that Sarah had built part of her empire on my ideas. The property evaluation algorithm she'd developed in 2019. I'd shown her my prototype 6 months earlier, thinking we were just sisters sharing work stories. The tenant screening system that saved Pinnacle Properties $200,000 annually, adapted from a spreadsheet I'd created for my own rentals. Our mother, Dorothy, always took Sarah's side. "Your sister is trying to help you," she'd say whenever I complained. "Maybe if you listened more and talked less, you'd be where she is." Where Sarah was, I'd soon learn, was sitting in an office she didn't actually control. In January 2021, while Sarah was closing another headline-grabbing deal, I quietly formed Beacon Trust LLC through a Delaware incorporation service. The paperwork took 3 days. The strategy took 3 years to execute. My first major acquisition was 47 Congress Street, a 12-story commercial building in Boston's financial district. The seller, retiring after 40 years, wanted a quick, clean sale with minimal publicity. I offered $3.2 million cash, no contingencies, closing in 30 days. The deed was recorded under Beacon Trust's name, public record number 2021 BOS 4782, notarized on February 15, 2021. 6 months later, Pinnacle Properties signed a 5-year lease for floors 8 through 11. Sarah never bothered to check who actually owned her office building. Why would she? The property manager I hired handled everything professionally, and all correspondence went through a separate management company email. By 2024, my portfolio had grown to 8 buildings valued at $12 million. Each acquisition was strategic, quiet, and held through different LLCs that all traced back to Beacon Trust. I specialized in off-market deals, distressed properties that needed minor renovations, and, ironically, buildings that Sarah had passed on for being too small to matter. The monthly revenue from all properties totaled $180,000. Sarah's rent alone contributed $47,000 of that. Every month when Pinnacle's automated payment hit my account, I'd remember her words, "You don't have what it takes for real commercial real estate." The beautiful irony was that 2 of my buildings were properties Sarah had tried desperately to acquire in 2022. She'd lost both bidding wars to an anonymous buyer with deep pockets, as she'd complained at last year's Thanksgiving. I'd simply smiled and passed the cranberry sauce. Sarah never bothered to check who actually owned her office building. That oversight would cost her more than money. November 23, 2024. Our Mother's Colonial in Brookline, Massachusetts. The same dining room where Sarah had announced every promotion, every acquisition, every magazine feature for the past 15 years. 15 relatives gathered around Mom's extended dining table: aunts, uncles, cousins, and Sarah's husband, Robert, who served as Pinnacle's CFO. The conversation, as always, centered on Sarah's latest triumph: a potential merger with Horizon Capital that would inject $15 million into Pinnacle Properties. "We're signing next week," Sarah announced, raising her wine glass. "This merger will make Pinnacle the largest woman-owned commercial real estate firm in New England." Everyone toasted, everyone except me. Sarah noticed. She always noticed when she wasn't receiving complete adoration. "Trina, you should be happy for family success," she said, voice carrying that familiar edge. "Speaking of which, I've been reviewing our family arrangements, and I've been too lenient with your rent situation." The room grew quiet. Forks paused mid-air. This was deliberately choreographed. Sarah had even positioned herself at the head of the table for maximum authority. "I've been charging you $2,267 for a two-bedroom in Back Bay," she continued. "The market rate is actually $6,800. I've been subsidizing your lifestyle for 3 years, and frankly, it's time you learned what real property management costs." Our cousin Michael laughed nervously. Aunt Patricia studied her plate. Robert, Sarah's husband, had the decency to look uncomfortable, though he'd clearly known this was coming. "I'll send the rent adjustment notice on Monday," Sarah concluded. "Consider it a business lesson from someone who actually understands the market." The silence stretched until Mom finally said, "Sarah's just trying to help you understand business better, Trina." I smiled and took a sip of wine. Sarah had just made the biggest mistake of her career. Every family gathering became Sarah's stage to showcase my failures. The pattern was so predictable I could have scripted it. Christmas 2020. "Trina's still playing hobby landlord with her little rentals. It's cute, like a kid's lemonade stand." She'd said this while signing a contract on her phone, making sure everyone saw the seven-figure deal amount. Easter 2021. "Did you hear Trina bought her first real building?" "Well, real is generous. It's basically a glorified warehouse. But we all start somewhere." She'd laughed, not mentioning that the glorified warehouse was the Congress Street property her own company would soon be renting. Thanksgiving 2022. Poor Trina doesn't understand that property management isn't just collecting rent. There's vision involved, strategic thinking. Some people have it, some don't. This was particularly rich considering she'd just lost 2 bidding wars to my anonymous LLCs. 4th of July 2023. "I offered to mentor Trina, but she's too proud." That's the problem with small thinkers. They don't recognize opportunity when it's handed to them. The opportunity she'd offered was a junior position, reporting to her 27-year-old protege. But the cruelest cut came in September 2023, when our grandmother left a small inheritance to be invested for the family's future. Sarah convinced Mom that I shouldn't be included in the investment committee because I lacked the sophistication for serious financial decisions. Through it all, I documented everything. Every insult, every dismissal, every public humiliation. Not out of spite, but out of habit. In real estate, documentation is everything. You never know when a casual comment might become a crucial piece of evidence. I'd endured 3 years of condescension for one simple reason: revenge is a dish best served with notarized documents. Sarah stood up from her chair, wineglass in hand, commanding the room's attention with practiced ease. The Thanksgiving turkey sat half-carved as she prepared for what was clearly a premeditated performance. "Before we continue dinner," she began, "I need to address something important about family responsibility and market realities." She turned to face me directly, eyes gleaming with the satisfaction of someone about to deliver a killing blow. "Trina, I've been reviewing your lease, and frankly, I've been enabling your failure by charging you below market rent. Effective December 1st, Your rent increases from $2,267 to $6,800 per month. Gasps rippled around the table. Our cousin Jennifer's mouth fell open. Uncle Thomas set down his fork with a sharp clink. Maybe when you pay market rate, Sarah continued, her voice dripping with false concern, you'll understand what real property management means. Consider this your wake-up call from someone who actually knows the business. Robert, her husband, shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. They'd clearly rehearsed this. His role was silent support. That's triple, Aunt Patricia ventured weakly. It's market rate, Sarah responded smoothly. I can't keep subsidizing Trina's inability to succeed. She needs to learn her place in the real world. The phrase hung in the air. Learn your place. Mom nodded slowly. Sarah's right, Trina. You can't expect family to carry you forever. Several relatives looked at their plates. Others watched me, waiting for my response, probably expecting tears or protests. Sarah stood there, triumphant, having just humiliated me in front of everyone who mattered to us. I set down my napkin carefully, pulled out my phone, and typed a 3-word text to Marcus Coleman, my attorney. Execute Plan B. Then I smiled at Sarah. You're absolutely right. It's time for market rates. While my relatives resumed awkward conversation and Sarah basked in her power play, I excused myself to the bathroom and pulled up the lease agreement on my phone. Section 17.3, the Professional Conduct Clause, glowed on the screen like a beacon. Landlord reserves the right to review and potentially terminate lease with 30 days' notice if tenant engages in harassment, discrimination, or unprofessional conduct toward any building resident, employee, or affiliated party. I'd insisted on that clause when Sarah signed the lease through her property manager 3 years ago. She'd probably never even read it. Why would a CEO review standard lease terms for office space? Marcus Coleman responded to my text within minutes. Recording of the dinner would be helpful. Also need the email she'll inevitably send. Ready to proceed when you are. I returned to the table, calm as still water. Sarah was explaining to our aunts how she was actually doing me a favor, teaching me about real business consequences. You'll thank me for this one day, she said, raising her glass toward me, when you finally understand how the real estate world works. I'm sure I will, I replied, raising my own glass, to learning experiences. Sarah's smile widened, mistaking my calm for defeat. Robert looked relieved the scene hadn't escalated. Mom nodded approvingly at my apparent acceptance. What they didn't know was that I'd been recording the entire conversation on my phone, perfectly legal in Massachusetts when you're part of the conversation. What they didn't know was that Sarah had just violated the one clause that could end everything, the professional conduct provision in her own lease. Sarah had just given me the ammunition I'd been waiting 3 years to use. November 24th, 6:47 a.m. Marcus Coleman's email arrived with attachments ready. Termination notice prepared. Professional conduct violation documented. Await your confirmation. November 25th, 2:15 p.m. Sarah's formal rent increase notice hit my inbox, copied to her property manager and Robert. Subject line: lease adjustment, market rate correction. The email was even worse than the dinner announcement, calling me a charity case who needed to face reality. Perfect. I forwarded Sarah's email to Marcus with just 3 words. Green light approved. November 26th, 8:30 a.m. I confirmed the Pinnacle Properties Board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. 8 investors would attend, including James Whitman from Horizon Capital, the lead on the $15 million merger. Sarah had chosen the perfect stage for her triumph. She just didn't know it would be mine. Marcus prepared 3 copies of every document: the original deed showing Beacon Trust's ownership, the lease agreement with Section 17.3 highlighted, Sarah's email about the rent increase, the Thanksgiving dinner recording transcript, and the 30-day termination notice. The beauty was in the timing. Sarah needed this merger. Without it, Pinnacle would struggle to compete with larger firms moving into Boston. The merger documents specifically required stable primary business location and no pending legal disputes. She was about to fail both requirements spectacularly. 9:45 a.m. Marcus and I sat in the lobby of 47 Congress Street, my building, though nobody knew it yet. The security guard, whom I'd hired 3 years ago, nodded respectfully. The Pinnacle Properties logo gleamed on the directory, marking floors 811. "Ready?" Marcus asked, adjusting his tie. "3 years ready," I replied. Above us, Sarah was starting her presentation to the board, completely unaware that her landlord was sitting in her own lobby, about to deliver the kind of lesson she'd never forget. At 9:50 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Mom." "Trina, I heard about Sarah's email. I know it seems harsh, but you need to accept help when it's offered. Don't make this worse by fighting. Keep the family peace." I typed back, "The family peace has always meant my silence. Not anymore." Then I blocked her number. Just for today. I also blocked Aunt Patricia, Uncle Thomas, and 3 cousins who'd already started their "Sarah means well" messages. Marcus reviewed the documents one final time. "Once we go up there, there's no taking it back. The termination notice becomes official. She'll have 30 days to vacate 4 floors of premium office space." "What's the alternative?" I asked. "Let her humiliate me forever, except that my success means nothing because it's not loud enough?" "I'm just making sure you understand the consequences. This will fundamentally change your family dynamics." I signed the authorization form, my signature steady and sure. My family dynamics have always been broken. I'm just done pretending otherwise. At 9:55 a.m., we entered the elevator. 4th floor, 5th, 6th. Each floor represented another year of being dismissed, overlooked, minimized. 7th floor. Almost there. "You know what the ironic part is?" I said as we passed the 8th floor, Pinnacle's reception area. I gave her a below-market rate. She's been paying $31 per square foot when the actual market rate is $47. I was the one subsidizing her, not the other way around. Marcus smiled grimly. "That'll make for an interesting revelation." 10th floor. The elevator opened to Pinnacle's executive level. Through the glass doors, I could see the boardroom. Sarah stood at the presentation screen, confident, commanding, completely in her element. Time to show her who really owned this element. If you've ever been underestimated by family who should support you, hit that subscribe button. And comment below, what would you do in Trina's position? Keep watching because the boardroom scene is about to get very interesting. I promise you've never seen a family confrontation end quite like this one. Trust me, what happens in the next 10 minutes changed everything. Not just for Sarah and me, but for how our entire family understands power and respect. November 26th, 10 o'clock a.m. The Pinnacle Properties boardroom was everything Sarah loved. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor, a mahogany table that cost more than most people's cars, and 8 investors worth a combined $200 million. Sarah stood at the presentation screen, her navy Armani suit impeccable, laser pointer in hand. The merger presentation was already on slide 12, financial projections that assumed, among other things, continued occupation of their current headquarters. "As you can see," Sarah was saying, "our 5-year lease on this location ensures stability through the merger transition. We've built incredible equity in this address. Clients know where to find us." James Whitman, lead investor from Horizon Capital, nodded approvingly. He'd brought 2 associates. The other 5 board members included Sarah's earliest investors, people who'd believed in her when Pinnacle was just an idea. I recognized one face that Sarah didn't know I knew, David Chen, who went by David Coleman professionally to avoid discrimination, owner of 3 boutique hotels. He was also my client, though Sarah had no idea. His properties were part of my portfolio under a different LLC. Through the glass, I watched Sarah click to the next slide. Post-merger growth strategy. She was in her element, commanding the room with the same confidence she'd wielded at Thanksgiving. Marcus checked his watch. "We let her get comfortable. Enter at 10:47? 10:47, I confirmed. Right before she gets to the facilities and operations section. Sarah had no idea that in 47 minutes, her carefully constructed world would start crumbling. She stood there, queen of her domain, not knowing her landlord was sitting in her own lobby, waiting for the perfect moment to introduce reality. At exactly 10:47 a.m., Marcus Coleman entered the boardroom with the measured confidence of someone holding a royal flush. The conversation halted mid-sentence. "I apologize for the interruption," Marcus said, though his tone suggested he wasn't sorry at all. "I'm Marcus Coleman, representing Beacon Trust LLC. We have an urgent matter regarding Ms. Morrison's tenancy that requires immediate attention." Sarah's laser pointer wavered slightly. "I'm in the middle of a board meeting. Whatever this is can wait." "I'm afraid it can't." Marcus placed his briefcase on the table. "This concerns the legal status of Pinnacle Properties headquarters lease." James Whitman leaned forward. "What's this about?" Robert, Sarah's husband and CFO, was already pulling up lease documents on his laptop. His face had gone pale. He was quick with numbers and quicker with implications. "This is highly inappropriate," Sarah said, but her voice had lost its commanding edge. "Security should never have let you up." "Security knows exactly who I represent," Marcus replied smoothly. "After all, we sign their paychecks." The room went silent. Sarah's hand gripped the table edge. "What do you mean?" David Coleman asked, though something in his expression suggested he was starting to piece things together. Marcus opened his briefcase with deliberate precision. "Beacon Trust LLC owns this building, has for 3 years, and as of this morning, we're exercising our right to review Pinnacle Properties lease under Section 17.3, the Professional Conduct Clause." Sarah laughed, but it sounded forced. "This is ridiculous. I've never even heard of Beacon Trust." "No," Marcus agreed, pulling out documents. "But you've been paying them rent for 3 years, $47,000 a month to be exact." Robert's laptop screen reflected in his glasses. He'd found something. His expression told Sarah everything she needed to know. Marcus laid 3 documents on the mahogany table with surgical precision. First, the deed for 47 Congress Street. He slid the paper toward the center. "Recorded February 15, 2021. Document number 2021 BOS 4782. Beacon Trust LLC is the sole owner." Sarah snatched the deed, scanning it frantically. The notary seal was genuine. The recording number checked out. "Second, your lease agreement, signed August 2021. Another document joined the first. Please note Section 17.3, highlighted in yellow. It states that harassment or unprofessional conduct toward any building resident constitutes grounds for lease termination with 30 days' notice." James Whitman picked up the lease, reading the highlighted section aloud. The other investors exchanged glances. "Third," Marcus continued, "evidence of violation." He produced Sarah's email and a transcript of the Thanksgiving dinner recording. On November 23rd, Ms. Morrison publicly humiliated a building resident, specifically calling them a failure and stating they needed to learn their place. On November 25th, she sent this email calling the same resident a charity case. "That's a family matter," Sarah protested. "It has nothing to do with—" "The resident in question is Trina Reeves," Marcus interrupted. "She lives in Unit 4B of a Beacon Trust property. Your conduct toward her explicitly violates your commercial lease terms." David Coleman spoke up. "Who exactly owns Beacon Trust?" Marcus smiled. "I think Ms. Morrison has figured that out by now." All eyes turned to Sarah. Her face had gone from pale to ashen. Robert closed his laptop slowly, the soft click echoing in the silent room. "No," Sarah whispered. "That's not possible." "Shall I invite my client in to discuss this directly?" Marcus asked. "She's been waiting in the lobby. Your lobby, or rather, her lobby." James Whitman set down the lease agreement with the careful movement of someone handling a live grenade. "Sarah, are you telling us you don't actually control your primary business location?" "There's been a misunderstanding," Sarah started, but her usual confidence had evaporated. "This is my sister playing some kind of game." "Your sister owns this building?" Another investor, Patricia Hartwell, looked incredulous. The sister you just called a failure in front of your entire family? She doesn't. She can't. Sarah grabbed her phone, presumably to check property records. She only has 3 small rental properties. David Coleman cleared his throat. Actually, she has 8 properties. I should know. I leased 2 of them for my hotel overflow housing. Sarah's head snapped toward him. You know my sister? I know Trina Reeves, the owner of Beacon Trust, Harborview Holdings, and Commercial Core LLC. Combined portfolio value approximately $12 million. He paused. I've been trying to convince her to sell me the Exeter Street property for 2 years. Robert finally spoke. The merger documents require stable headquarters. If we lose this location, we lose the merger, Whitman finished. No one's investing $15 million in a company that might be evicted from its primary office. Sarah's hands shook as she scrolled through her phone. This can't be legal. She can't just... She's not just doing anything, Marcus interjected. She's enforcing a legal clause in a binding contract. A clause you agreed to when you signed the lease. Patricia Hartwell stood up. I think we need to hear from Ms. Reeves directly. Sarah's face cycled through emotions. Disbelief, anger, fear, and finally, the dawning realization that she'd catastrophically miscalculated who held the power in this room. I entered the boardroom at 11:03 a.m., wearing my best charcoal suit, the one Sarah had mocked as trying too hard at last year's Christmas party. Hello, Sarah. I believe we need to discuss your lease terms. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. Sarah stood frozen at the presentation screen, her merger slide still glowing behind her. A monument to assumptions she'd never thought to verify. Trina. My name came out as a whisper. Ms. Reeves, I corrected professionally. In this building, I'm your landlord. James Whitman stood and extended his hand. Ms. Reeves, I wish we were meeting under different circumstances. I shook his hand firmly. So do I, Mr. Whitman. I've actually been following Horizon Capital's portfolio. Impressive work on the seaport development. Sarah found her voice. This is impossible. You're lying. You can't afford... The failed property manager you humiliated at Thanksgiving owns your entire headquarters, I said calmly. I've owned it for 3 years. You've been paying me rent every month while telling our family I'm a failure. I pulled out my phone and showed the banking app. Here's yesterday's deposit, $47,000 from Pinnacle Properties. Would you like to see 3 years of records? Robert had his head in his hands. The other investors were reassessing everything they thought they knew about both Reeves' sisters. But more importantly, I continued, let's discuss your violation of the professional conduct clause. Marcus, can you play the recording? No, Sarah said quickly. That's not necessary. I think it is, Patricia Hartwell said. If we're potentially losing our headquarters over this, we need to understand exactly what happened. Sarah's carefully constructed image was about to shatter in front of the people whose opinions she valued most. Before we discuss the lease violation, I said, pulling out my portfolio summary, let me clarify something. Sarah, you've spent 3 years calling me a hobby landlord. Here's my actual portfolio. I distributed copies to each board member. 8 commercial properties, combined value, $12 million, monthly revenue, $180,000, all acquired while you were telling everyone I was playing with kids' lemonade stands. Sarah stared at the document. The Exeter Street building, that was you? October 2022. You lost that bidding war to an anonymous buyer with deep pockets, remember? You complained about it at Thanksgiving. I turned to the board. The Washington Avenue property you tried to acquire in December? Also mine. David Coleman smiled slightly. I told you she was impressive, Sarah. You just never asked who my other landlord was. This explains why we kept losing those bids, Robert said quietly, studying the portfolio. We were bidding against someone who knew our maximum offers. I never used insider information, I clarified. I simply paid attention when Sarah bragged about her acquisition strategies at every family dinner. She announced her maximum prices like they were lottery winnings. James Whitman was doing mental math. Your revenue exceeds many of our portfolio companies. Why keep this secret? Would you announce your success to someone who'd use it against you? I asked. Sarah's built her identity on being the family's only success story. I chose to build wealth instead of a reputation. Patricia Hartwell looked between us. So while Sarah was publicly calling you a failure, you were quietly becoming her landlord? Not just her landlord, I corrected. Her second biggest competitor in Boston's mid-tier commercial market. Check properties acquired in the last 18 months. Sarah's empire suddenly looked a lot less impressive. This story is reaching its climax. If you believe in standing up to family bullies with class and evidence, smash that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear that success is the best revenge. And if you've ever been underestimated by people who should support you, comment your story below. I read every single one. Now, let's see how Sarah handles the complete reversal of everything she believed about power and success. James Whitman's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Ms. Morrison, your due diligence on your own headquarters is concerning. How did you not know who your landlord was? The lease was handled through a management company, Sarah said weakly. It's standard practice. It's lazy practice, Patricia Hartwell interrupted. And now it's costing us a $15 million merger. Sarah turned to me, desperation cracking her professional facade. Trina, please, we can work this out privately. Like you worked out tripling my rent privately? I asked. Oh, wait, you announced that to 15 family members. Marcus stepped forward. My client is prepared to offer terms, but first, we need to address the professional conduct violation. Sarah's shoulders dropped. She knew what was coming. I apologize for my unprofessional conduct, she said, barely audible. Louder, please, I said. And to whom are you apologizing? Sarah's face flushed deep red. I apologize to Ms. Trina Reeves for my unprofessional conduct and harassment. And, Marcus prompted, and I request your consideration for lease continuation. The board members watched this reversal with fascination. Sarah Morrison, who'd commanded every room she'd entered for 15 years, was being humbled by the little sister she'd dismissed as a failure. Robert spoke up. What are your terms? I looked at Sarah directly. First, a written apology to be sent to every family member who witnessed your Thanksgiving announcement. Second, a public acknowledgement of my success at the next family gathering. Third, strict adherence to professional conduct going forward. The lease terms? Whitman asked. That depends, I said, on whether Sarah can demonstrate she understands the actual market rate. Sarah, what's the real per square foot rate for this building? Sarah's humiliation was complete, but it was just beginning. I'm offering you what you never offered me, a chance to maintain dignity while correcting your mistakes, I said, opening my folder. Option 1. 30-day termination as per the violation. You'll need to relocate 42 employees and explain to your clients why Pinnacle Properties no longer has a stable address. Sarah's knuckles went white, gripping the table. Option 2. 60-day transition period to find new offices. I'll provide reference letters confirming you were a tenant in good standing, minus this incident. Option 3, Robert asked hopefully. Lease continuation with new terms. Market rate is $47 per square foot. You're currently paying $31. That's a monthly increase from $47,000 to $71,000. Gasps from several board members. Sarah looked physically ill. However, I continued, I'll maintain your current rate with a 15% increase, $54,000 monthly, if you meet my conditions. Marcus distributed the term sheet. The conditions are non-negotiable. Written apology to all family members within 24 hours. Public acknowledgement of Ms. Reeves' success at the next family gathering. Quarterly reviews with strict professional conduct standards. All future communication regarding the lease through legal representatives only. This is extortion, Sarah said weakly. No, Patricia Hartwell corrected. This is business. The same kind you've been conducting for years. David Coleman added, honestly, Sarah, she's being generous. If you'd tripled my rent and humiliated me publicly, you'd already be locked out. James Whitman stood. Ms. Morrison, you have 1 hour to decide. The merger is contingent on stable operations. Without that, he shrugged. Sarah looked at me with something I'd never seen in her eyes before, fear mixed with respect. These terms are non-negotiable and expire in 1 hour, I said, checking my watch. 11:47 a.m. Sarah followed me into the hallway, abandoning all pretense of superiority. Trina, please, let's discuss this as sisters. We stopped being sisters when you made me your public punching bag, I replied, continuing toward the elevator. It was just a joke. You know how I am at family dinners. It wasn't a joke when you've humiliated me for 3 years, Sarah. I stopped and faced her. Every holiday, every birthday, every family gathering, you built your ego on my supposed failures. I'll forgive the rent increase, she said desperately. We'll go back to the original amount. You'll forgive? I laughed. Sarah, you don't have anything to forgive. You're my tenant. I set the rates. Robert appeared in the hallway. Sarah, the board is getting restless. Whitman's already on the phone with his partners. Sarah grabbed my arm. What do you want? Just tell me what you want. I wanted a sister who celebrated my success instead of diminishing it. I wanted a family that recognized my achievements instead of constantly comparing me to you. But what I want now is simple. Respect. The terms are too harsh. The terms are business, Robert interrupted, surprising both of us. Trina's right, Sarah. You would have demanded twice as much in her position. Sarah turned to her husband in shock. You're taking her side? I'm taking the side of keeping our company viable, he said firmly. Sign the terms, apologize, move forward. Through the boardroom glass, we could see Whitman standing, preparing to leave. 2 other investors were packing their briefcases. 43 minutes left, I said, entering the elevator. Marcus will wait for your decision. As the doors closed, I saw Sarah's face, the exact expression she'd worn at Thanksgiving, but reversed. Now she was the one being left behind. At 11:44 a.m., 3 minutes before the deadline, Sarah signed the new lease agreement with a shaking hand. Congratulations, Marcus said, notarizing the signature. Pinnacle Properties remains a tenant of Beacon Trust LLC under the amended terms. The board reconvened, and James Whitman reviewed the new agreement. 54,000 monthly, quarterly reviews, professional conduct clause enforcement. Ms. Reeves, these terms are more than fair considering the circumstances. I believe in second chances, I said, looking at Sarah, even for people who never gave me a first one. Marcus pulled out the additional documents. The written apology needs to be sent to these 15 email addresses by noon tomorrow. The family acknowledgement must occur at the next gathering, with at least 10 family members present. Sarah nodded mechanically, defeat written across every line of her face. One more thing, I added. The merger can proceed, but I want quarterly financial reports as part of our landlord-tenant relationship, standard for commercial leases of this size. That's highly unusual, one investor started. So is discovering your landlord is the person you've been calling a failure for 3 years, David Coleman observed. I'd say Ms. Reeves has earned the right to unusual terms. Patricia Hartwell stood. I motion to proceed with the merger at the adjusted valuation. Given the complications revealed today, I suggest reducing our offer by 40%. 40%? Sarah's voice cracked. You've demonstrated questionable judgment and due diligence, Whitman said bluntly. 9 million instead of 15. Take it or leave it. Sarah looked at me, perhaps hoping for intervention. I remained silent. This wasn't my business decision to influence. We'll take it, Robert said quietly. The most expensive Thanksgiving dinner in our family's history had just cost Sarah $6 million. Within 2 hours, the Boston business community knew something significant had happened at Pinnacle Properties. By 2 p.m., the Boston Business Journal's real estate reporter was calling both our phones. Sources say there was a dramatic ownership reveal during Pinnacle's board meeting. Care to comment? Sarah declined. I gave a brief statement. Beacon Trust LLC has successfully renegotiated lease terms with a commercial tenant. We don't discuss specific client relationships. By 3 p.m., three of Sarah's major clients had called David Coleman, asking if the rumors were true. Is Sarah Morrison really renting from her sister? The one she's been calling a failure at every industry event? The merger proceeded, but at 9 million instead of 15 million. The cost of arrogance quantified in a single afternoon. Horizon Capital's press release mentioned adjusted valuations based on newly discovered operational considerations. At 4:17 p.m., Sarah's email arrived in 15 inboxes. Dear family, I owe Trina an apology. My comments at Thanksgiving about her professional capabilities were inappropriate, unprofessional, and completely wrong. Trina has built a successful real estate portfolio that I failed to recognize or respect. I was blinded by my own ego and treated her shamefully. She deserves your respect and mine. I hope she can forgive me. Sarah. Mom called me immediately. What did you do to your sister? I showed her who actually owns the building she works in, I replied. The same building she's been paying me rent on for 3 years while calling me a failure. The silence lasted so long I thought she'd hung up. Robert texted me privately. Thank you for not destroying us completely. Sarah needed this lesson. The board is requiring her to take leadership coaching. They're also implementing new oversight measures. By evening, 2 board members had submitted resignation letters. Sarah's reputation as Boston's unstoppable force in commercial real estate had been permanently altered. She was now the CEO who'd been schooled by her failure sister in front of her entire board. The merger proceeded, but at 9 million instead of 15 million. The cost of arrogance is always higher than humility. The family group chat exploded within minutes of Sarah's email. Aunt Patricia, is this real? Trina owns Sarah's office building? Uncle Thomas, this seems cruel, Trina. Family doesn't do this to family. Cousin Michael, wait, Sarah's been paying Trina rent this whole time while calling her a failure? That's actually hilarious. Mom called me 3 times. I finally answered on the 4th. How could you humiliate your sister like this? She demanded. The same way she humiliated me for 3 years, I replied calmly, except I used facts and legal documents instead of insults and whine. She's devastated, Trina. The merger got reduced. Board members resigned. She's facing consequences for her actions. That's not devastation, Mom. That's accountability. You should have protected her reputation. Mom, when did you ever protect mine? When she called me a failure at Christmas? When she said I was playing landlord at Easter? When she excluded me from Grandma's investment committee? Silence. Robert called that evening. I wanted to apologize. I knew what Sarah was doing to you was wrong. I should have stopped it. Why didn't you? Honestly, I was afraid of becoming her next target. I've watched her destroy people who challenged her. I didn't realize you were building something bigger the whole time. The younger cousins started a separate group chat called Team Trina. My cousin Jennifer wrote, "Finally, someone stood up to Sarah's bullying. You're my hero." But the family was split. The older generation thought I'd gone too far. The younger ones thought I hadn't gone far enough. Mom said I should have protected Sarah's reputation. She never once protected mine. The Property Management Association of New England reached out within a week. Ms. Reeves, we'd like to feature you in our quarterly magazine. Your portfolio growth is exactly the kind of success story our members need to hear. The interview request from Boston Real Estate Times came next. From shadow to spotlight, the developer who quietly built an empire. 3 acquisition offers arrived for Beacon Trust LLC, ranging from $18 to $22 million. I declined them all. This was never about the money. At the Northeast Real Estate Conference in December, I was invited to speak on a panel titled Alternative Paths to Portfolio Growth. The moderator introduced me as the developer who proved that quiet accumulation beats loud proclamation. Sarah was supposed to speak at the same conference. She canceled last minute. David Coleman publicly announced he was moving his overflow housing contract from another provider to my properties. I prefer working with landlords who let their portfolios speak louder than their egos, he told the Boston Business Journal. New clients started calling. Property owners who'd been put off by Sarah's aggressive style wanted to work with someone who understood discretion. 3 major deals materialized in December alone. The girl who was playing landlord was featured on the cover of New England Property Quarterly. The headline, "The Quiet Storm: How Trina Reeves Built a $12 million Portfolio While Everyone Watched Her Sister." They wanted to photograph me in front of 47 Congress Street. I declined. The building is just a building. This story is about refusing to let others define your worth. But I kept a copy of the magazine. I left it on my coffee table when Mom visited in January. She stared at it for a long time but said nothing. Some recognition doesn't need words. Success measured in square footage and rental income spoke louder than any family dinner announcement. First quarter, 2025 financial statement for Beacon Trust, LLC. Portfolio value, $14.4 million, 20% increase. Monthly revenue, $216,000, up from $180,000. New acquisitions, 5 properties totaling $2.4 million. Occupancy rate, 97%. Notable tenant, Pinnacle Properties, never missed a payment, often 3 days early. I hired 3 staff members in January. A property manager who'd been laid off from Sarah's company during the restructuring, an acquisitions analyst fresh from Harvard Business School who'd read about the Thanksgiving reveal, and an administrative assistant who said she wanted to work for someone who built something real without stepping on others. Sarah's rent payments arrived like clockwork, early, electronic, with no communication beyond the automated confirmation. $54,000 on the 28th of each month, 3 days before the due date. She was now my most reliable tenant. The Harvard Business School case study request came in February. Power Dynamics in Family Business, the Beacon Trust Revelation. I declined to participate, but they wrote it anyway using public records and the Boston Business Journal articles. My banker called with congratulations. Your credit line has been increased to $10 million. No application necessary. Your payment history and portfolio performance speak for themselves. The same banker who'd questioned my first commercial loan in 2021, asking if I really understood the commitment, now wanted to take me to lunch to discuss expansion opportunities. By March, 3 more properties were under contract. Each seller mentioned they'd heard about my reputation for smooth, drama-free transactions. "We know you won't play games," one said. "Your word means something." Sarah, meanwhile, had implemented the board's requirements. Leadership coaching twice weekly, oversight committee approval for all acquisitions over $500,000, and monthly performance reviews. The girl who'd been mocked for having 3 rental properties now controlled enough commercial real estate to influence Boston's mid-tier market pricing. Numbers don't lie, even when family does. December 20th, 2024. Mom's house again. The same dining room, different dynamics. Sarah arrived late, without her usual grand entrance. She sat quietly at the far end of the table, my old spot. I didn't take her usual place at the head, that would have been petty. I sat in the middle, comfortable with my position. "Trina," she approached me in the kitchen while I was refilling my wine. "Can we talk?" "We're talking now. I mean really talk, like sisters." "We can be family, Sarah, but business stays business, a lesson you taught me brutally well." "I've lost 2 more board members. The merger terms keep getting worse. My reputation is—" "Your reputation is exactly what you built it to be," I interrupted. "You're known as someone who punches down. That hasn't changed. What changed is that you discovered I wasn't actually down." "I'm in leadership coaching. They're making me examine my patterns of dominance." "Good. I need your help, Trina. The board respects you now. If you could say something to them, no. Your relationship with your board is your business. Our relationship is now tenant and landlord. Those boundaries don't blur. She looked older, diminished. The designer dress and perfect makeup couldn't hide the exhaustion of facing consequences. How long are you going to punish me? I'm not punishing you, Sarah. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. Mom watched from the doorway but didn't intervene. She'd learned that her daughter's relationship had fundamentally shifted, and her opinion no longer tipped the scales. We can be civil, I offered, professional, even friendly at family gatherings, but the days of you using me as your stepping stone are over. Sarah nodded, understanding finally that respect isn't negotiable anymore. It's mandatory. The family business separation agreement was drafted by Marcus and signed on December 27th, witnessed by Robert and, surprisingly, Mom. The terms were clear. No business discussions at family gatherings, all property matters handled exclusively through legal representatives, no public comments about each other's business ventures, mutual respect clause, no derogatory remarks about professional capabilities, quarterly meetings in professional settings only, with written agendas. This feels so formal, Mom said as she signed as witness. Formal is what keeps things clean, I replied. Informal is what led to 3 years of humiliation. Sarah signed without argument. The leadership coaching was working, or perhaps the reduced merger terms had taught her the cost of arrogance. Robert added an unexpected request. I'd like to learn from you, Trina, not about the family dynamics, but about your acquisition strategy. The board wants Pinnacle to adopt some of your methods: quiet accumulation, off-market deals, patient capital deployment. That would blur the boundaries. I'll pay for consulting services, he offered, through a separate LLC, completely independent of Sarah's involvement. I considered it. Market rate, $2,000 per hour, minimum 10-hour commitment. Done. Sarah watched this negotiation silently. Her husband was now paying her failure sister for business advice. The document established something we'd never had: clear expectations. No more surprise announcements at dinner. No more public humiliations disguised as jokes. No more using family gatherings as stages for dominance displays. Boundaries aren't walls, Marcus had said when drafting it. They're property lines. Everyone knows where they stand, what they own, and what they don't. By New Year's Eve, the new rules were tested and held. Sarah mentioned a property she was eyeing. I redirected. Send the details to Marcus. The conversation shifted smoothly to other topics. Respect isn't negotiable anymore. It's mandatory. Sarah's public apology at Easter was stiff, scripted, but witnessed by 23 family members. I want to acknowledge something important, she began, standing but not commanding the room like before. I've spent years diminishing Trina's achievements while inflating my own. I called her a failure when she was actually building something remarkable. She owns the building my company operates from. She's been my landlord for 3 years while I mocked her at every family gathering. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. The room was silent. Cousin Jennifer started clapping slowly. Others joined gradually. Not enthusiastic applause, but acknowledgement. Sarah's LinkedIn post went live that evening. Leadership means acknowledging when you failed to lead. For 3 years, I've publicly dismissed my sister Trina Reeves's achievements in real estate. The truth? She owns multiple commercial properties, including the building housing Pinnacle Properties. Her portfolio rivals many established firms. I let ego blind me to her success and treated her disrespectfully. Real leaders celebrate others' achievements. I failed that test. I'm committed to doing better. 347 reactions, 89 comments. Most expressing surprise, some offering support, others sharing their own stories of family professional rivalry. At the May Industry Gala, Sarah mentioned me in her speech. Success isn't just about what you build, but who you elevate along the way. I forgot that lesson and paid the price. My sister Trina taught me that quiet achievement often surpasses loud proclamation. I wasn't there to hear it, David Coleman texted me a video. Each apology felt performed rather than genuine, but that didn't matter. Sarah was complying with the terms, publicly acknowledging what she'd spent years denying, that her failure sister had succeeded beyond her recognition. Her children started treating me differently. Her daughter, 16, asked me about property investment for a school project. Her son, 14, said, "Mom says you're the smart one. Can you teach me about compound interest?" Sarah's apology was stiff, but it was public. Sometimes that's all the justice you need. June 2025. The landscape had permanently shifted. Sarah's company stabilized at a smaller scale. Pinnacle Properties was worth $30 million instead of $50, but it was sustainable. The board's oversight had actually improved operations. Her leadership coaching was mandatory for another year. My portfolio reached $18 million in valuation. The quiet accumulation strategy continued. No press releases, no grand announcements, just steady acquisition of undervalued properties with potential. At family gatherings, we maintained civil distance. Sarah no longer commanded the room. She participated in it. I no longer sat on the edges. I chose my position based on comfort, not hierarchy. Mom had stopped comparing us. There was nothing left to compare. We operated in parallel worlds now, intersecting only at family events and quarterly lease reviews. The Forbes mention came in their feature on female real estate investors. Trina Reeves represents a new model of property development: patient capital, strategic silence, and letting portfolios speak louder than press releases. Sarah wasn't mentioned in the article, though Pinnacle Properties appeared in a sidebar about traditional approaches to real estate development. Robert's consulting arrangement had yielded 2 successful acquisitions using my methods. He paid on time, took detailed notes, and never mentioned family dynamics. Pure business. 3 of Sarah's former clients had quietly moved their business to my properties. They never said why directly, but one mentioned appreciating drama-free transactions. The power dynamic hadn't just shifted, it had been completely reconstructed. Sarah now understood that public perception wasn't power, ownership was. I understood that revenge served cold wasn't revenge at all. It was simply truth revealed at the right moment. Power dynamics in families can change, I told a podcast interviewer who'd heard about the Thanksgiving story. It just takes courage, and occasionally, a deed to prove it. July 4th, 2025. Mom asked me to come early to help set up. We were alone in the kitchen. "I owe you an apology," she said, not looking up from the potato salad she was mixing. I waited. "I always knew you were capable. Sarah was so loud about her success. It was easier to believe the loud one. "You knew about the building, didn't you?" I asked. "Before Thanksgiving?" She nodded. "I saw the deed transfer in 2021, public record. I hoped you'd tell Sarah yourself, work it out as sisters. While you let her humiliate me?" I was wrong. The words came out strangled, 40 years of favoritism finally acknowledged. I was wrong about you, about her, about what success looks like. Mom, I didn't need you to promote my success. I needed you to not participate in my humiliation. She finally looked at me. I see that now. Sarah needed my praise to feel successful. You built success despite my neglect. That makes you stronger than both of us. I'm not stronger. I'm just done being smaller. I told Sarah the same thing I'm telling you. I failed as a mother when I let comparison replace connection. We stood in silence, years of hurt and hierarchy between us. "I'm proud of you," she finally said. "Not for the buildings or the money, for refusing to let us define you." It had taken 34 years, but Mom finally said the words I'd waited to hear. "I was wrong about you." Later, when Sarah arrived, Mom treated us exactly the same. No special attention, no comparison, just 2 daughters at a family barbecue. It was the most normal we'd ever been. Sometimes acceptance comes not with fanfare, but with quiet recognition. August 2025. I sat in my office. Yes, I had an actual office now. Not Sarah's hand-me-down space, but my own suite in a building I owned, reflecting on the journey. The lesson wasn't about revenge, it was about patience. For 3 years, I'd built wealth while Sarah built image. She announced every victory. I recorded every deed. She needed witnesses. I needed documentation. She confused volume with value. Never let anyone, especially family, convince you that their perception of you is your reality. The final twist came that morning. Mom called, "I'm selling the house, too big for just me." "I'll buy it," I said immediately. "I can't let you." "Market rate, full inspection, standard sale." "Sarah wants it too." "Then let her bid." The bidding war lasted 2 days. Sarah offered emotional arguments about preserving family legacy. I offered cash, 15% above asking, closing in 2 weeks. Mom took my offer. "You'll rent it back to me?" she asked. "500 a month. Below market, but not insulting. A fair family rate." Sarah's furious. Sarah's always furious when she doesn't win. The purchase agreement was signed August 15th. I now owned the house where Sarah had humiliated me for years, but I didn't gloat. I converted the dining room into a home office, installed Mom in the master suite she'd always wanted, and turned Sarah's old room into a rental for traveling nurses. "You've changed," Mom observed during the walkthrough. "No," I corrected. "I've just stopped pretending to be less than I am." The house where I'd been smallest now bore my name on the deed. But the real ownership was internal. I owned my worth, my voice, my right to take up space. That's a title no one can transfer. Today, Sarah pays her rent on time, and I cash her checks with a smile. The best revenge is a direct deposit. We see each other monthly at family dinners. She brings wine, I bring dessert. We discuss weather, movies, anything but business. The boundaries hold. Her company is smaller but stable. Mine is larger and growing. Neither of us mentions it. At Thanksgiving 2025, exactly 1 year after the announcement that changed everything, Sarah sat quietly while Mom carved the turkey. I helped serve. No speeches, no announcements, no public humiliation. Just family, finally acting like one. The buildings stand as silent witnesses to what we've become, landlord and tenant, sisters and strangers, connected by blood and separated by boundaries that should have existed all along. Success isn't about being seen, it's about being undeniable. And I built something undeniable, one deed at a time. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear that their worth isn't determined by family opinions. Comment your own story of overcoming family doubts. I read every single one. Did Sarah learn her lesson? Should Trina have been harder on her? Let me know your thoughts below. Remember, document everything, stay professional, and success is always the best response to disrespect. Check out my next video about the coworker who tried to steal my promotion until HR found the email trail I'd been building for 2 years. See you in the next video.